Good evening. Yeah, I'm presenting a case. Informant parents, a 3-year-old male child with chief complaint of inward deviation of alternate eyes first observed at the age of 6 months. History of present illness. Patient was all right when at the age of 6 months their parents start noticing deviation of left eye, which was gradual in onset and intermittent and seen for approximately 75% of the day. It was not associated with diplopia or any precipitating factors like fever, convulsions, or seizure, trauma, or any ocular surgery. He visited a local eye doctor at the age of 6 months and was advised 1 hour alternate patching for 3 months. No improvement seen by the parents, so consulted our hospital and was advised glasses with part-time occlusion. Currently, he is using alternate occlusion therapy 1 to 2 hours per day and glasses for more than 10 hours. Parents noticed improvement in the deviation, but still has residual deviation over the glasses. Birth history, gestational period 9 months, cesarean delivery with low birth weight of 1.8 kg and intrauterine growth retardation. No history of NICU admission, no history of pre or postnatal complications, history of phototherapy for 4 days, normal developmental milestone achieved, and vaccination up to date. No history of any mental illness or any medication during the antenatal period.
Now, what is
Past
relevant? Once again, what is relevant history in strabismus?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, can you just list the relevance of history taking in strabismus? How important is the history taking?
Birth history.
What are all the various factors that can contribute to the manifestation of the squint?
Because if there is a history of oxygen therapy or NICU admission, patient can have a retina like diseases like ROP, retinopathy or prematurity, which
Okay.
can predispose to esotropia later,
Okay.
or any uh, oxygen, any history of hypoxia. All this can lead to neurological problem, which can also present later as esotropia.
Yeah. Anything else?
In instrumental delivery, the patients can have muscular trauma and esotropia can be there.
Yeah, trauma is also one of the
Yeah.
contributing factors. Anything else? Okay, go on.
Okay. A past history glass power currently using was in right eye plus 2 diopter spherical and minus 0.5 diopter cylinder at 180 degree, and in left eye plus 2.5 diopter spherical and 0.5 diopter cylinder at 180 degree. There was no history of headache, trauma, ocular surgery, fever, seizure, or convulsion in the past. No history of any debilitating illness or any focal neurological deficit. There was no significant medical history. Family history, there was no history of any consanguinity. Father has myopia, mother has hyperopia and squint since childhood. General and systemic examination were within normal limit. Now ocular examination. Head posture was normal. General ocular inspection was normal with no lid abnormality. Ocular movement were full and free in all gauges. Pupil were round and reacting to direct and consistent light reflex. Fixation preference was central, steady and maintained in both eyes. Best corrected visual acuity with Leah symbol chart was 6 by 7.5 in both eyes. Cycloplegic refraction in right eye plus 3 diopter and minus 0.5 cylinder at 180, and in left eye plus 3 oblique minus 5 at 180. Glass power currently using was plus 2 diopter spherical and minus 0.5 cylinder at 180 in right eye, plus 2.5 diopter spherical minus 1.5 cylinder at 180 in left eye. Hirschberg test shows right convergence squint. Cover and cover test shows esotropia. Alternate cover test shows free alteration with no fixation preference. Prism bar cover test shows 35 prism diopter in all gauges for distance and near over the glasses. And prism bar cover test without the glasses was 45 prism diopter for distance in all gauges and for near. This is the picture. Sorry for the bad picture. The patient was really uncooperative. So in the center, you can, in the primary gauge, you can see right esotropia over the glasses. Now slit lamp examination. First right eye. Lid were normal, conjunctiva and sclera normal, cornea clear, anterior chamber optically clear and normal in depth in center, and periphery with Van Eyck's grade 3, iris normal in color and pattern, lens clear, anterior vitreous clear.
Now, when you see a
Fundus,
esotropia, what are all the things that you look for on slit lamp examination? What is that you're looking for? Is it just a routine cleaning that you're doing, or is it something that you look for particularly when you do a slit lamp examination?
any corneal pathology like in the visual axis, opacity, or cataract,
Yes. Then
then any lid abnormality like that
yeah,
can
yes,
mimic as a
so
pseudoisotropia.
ptosis and even your appearance. Like you were talking even about head postures. What are the head postures that you expect? You said there is no head posture. What if in case this child had a head posture?
Face turn.
A child can have face turned to the right, depending
Okay.
on the which side is involved, right or left face turn can be there.
Now in an esotropia, if you see a AHP, so what are your differential diagnoses? Do you expect that in a comitant squint or in an incomitant squint?
Incomitant squint.
So your differential
Incomitant.
diagnosis would be?
The congenital 6 nerve palsy.
6 nerve palsy.
Okay, anything else that you would think about?
Like any restrictive or retraction syndrome,
Yeah, Duane's can also present with
Duane's type 1 can present, and
yeah.
congenital fibrosis of extraocular muscle.
Yeah. So whenever you're doing an examination, you should have certain things in mind and you should look for it. Okay. Even when you're looking for the external examination, you look for ptosis or any other contributing factors towards your squint.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, motility examination, always look for limitation of movements and also associated overaction. Like for example, your inferior oblique overaction can be an associated feature of an infantile esotropia itself. And when you're doing a cover
Yes.
and cover test, look carefully for a DVD. And nystagmus is something which is very important, which should not be missed in a child where you're examining an esotropia, because your nystagmus blockade syndrome and other things can have an associated nystagmus. Child might be converging to overcome that nystagmus. So all these things you would probably pick it up on your clinical examination. So you need to correlate all these things and come to a final diagnosis. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Next one.
Fundus done with indirect ophthalmoscopy with 20 diopter lens. Good red glow was present. This was pink in color, moderate in size, and vertically oval in shape with curved disc ratio of 0.3. Vessel caliber were normal and ratio of 2:3 was present. Background retina was normal, macula normal with foveal reflex present. And IOP done digitally was normal. Now in the left eye, lid was normal, conjunctiva and sclera was normal. Cornea clear, anterior chamber optically clear with normal in depth and center and periphery with Van Eyck's grade of 3. Iris normal in color and pattern, lens clear, anterior vitreous clear. Fundus,
Okay, it was normal, right?
yes ma'am, normal. Now case summary. 3-year-old male child with low birth weight or intrauterine growth retardation with family history of hyperopia with strabismus in mother. Onset at 6 months of age with alternating inward deviation of eyes. Absence of underlying systemic or ocular abnormalities. Started on glasses, showed a minimal reduction in deviation for distance and near. No disparity in the angle for distance and near. Equal vision in both eyes and freely alternating fixation. So my probable diagnosis was partial accommodative esotropia.
So what are the various types of esotropia that you know of? How do you basically classify esotropia?
Esotropia can be comitant, incomitant, and sensory. Like comitant can be divided into accommodative.
What do you mean by comitant esotropia? For the benefit of all viewers, I don't know. Yeah, tell.
Degree of deviation is equal in all gauges. That is comitant. When degree of deviation is
positions in which you measure the squint.
Yes, ma'am. Pardon.
No, what are the various gaze positions? You said that the deviation is going to be equal in all gaze positions. What are the various gaze positions that you usually measure the squint?
In all the 9 gazes, we can measure like elevation in the primary gaze. Now, and dextro elevation, dextro depression, dextroversion, lever elevation, lever depression, and lever version.
Okay.
In all 9 cases.
Any other information that you will get in measuring the squint in various gaze positions? Apart
Like
from
AV pattern, we can assess by upward or downward gaze.
yeah, what is A pattern? How much of an angle variation should
In
be
A
there?
pattern, 10 prism diopter difference should be there in the upward and downward gaze, and 15 in V pattern.
Okay. Okay, so how do you classify?
So Comkin can be divided into accommodative and non-accommodative. Accommodative can be of 4 types, like refractive, non-refractive, hypo-accommodative, and partially accommodative. Like non-accommodative can be infantile esotropia, convergence excess esotropia, divergence insufficiency esotropia, basic esotropia, and cyclic esotropia, nystagmus blockade esotropia. And in cases of incomitant, it can be like paralytic or non-paralytic. In paralytic, it is
Yeah, basically when you see patients, there might be mixed up, there might be a slight overlap of all these things also. Like in this case, if you see it is not a classical partially accommodative esotropia. This looks more like an infantile esotropia. Why?
because of large angle of deviation
Yeah, one is large angle of deviation. The other one is
and no associate and constant. The deviation is constant.
okay.
And, no
Any
other neurological factors is
yeah, there's no associated. But one more thing, because the age at presentation, this was an early presentation. The parents had noticed
at the
deviation
sixth
as ever since 6 months of age. Usually, if you see a purely accommodative type of esotropia is going to manifest a little later when the child tries to accommodate.
accommodate.
That is
Yes.
only mostly around 2 years. 1.5 to 2 years is when this child will start manifesting intermittent esotropia when the child tries to accommodate. Okay, this
Yes, ma'am.
basically is not classical partially accommodative esotropia. It mostly looks like an infantile esotropia with a little bit of a hyperopic component. That hyperopic component is probably taking care of how much of esotropia that is corrected by the glasses. I mean, when do you call it as I mean, accommodative component is there or not? Minimum angle of variation should be at least 10 prisms or
It is 10 to 12.
when you measure with and without the glasses. That is, if you give the hyperopic correction, you get the child adapted to the glasses for a minimum of 4 weeks, and then you remeasure. And then if you see that there is a significant variation in your angle with and without the glasses of more than 10 prisms, only then there is an accommodative component to your esotropia. So the plan here is that the glasses is not going to take care because you know the angle is 45 primarily. So the
Yes,
entire
ma'am.
angle is not going to get corrected. If you're going to plan a surgery, the amount of angle that you need to correct will depend upon the manifest deviation over the glasses because this child is going to emmetropize. Okay, so
Yes,
this
ma'am.
hyperopia is going to get corrected. So the amount of deviation what you see over the glasses you need to correct. So you give the correction to see and measure the angle over the glasses and plan your surgery
Sir.
accordingly. Okay, in this case, I think there was a variation of 10 prisms, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I think
Yes,
with
ma'am.
without glasses, I think there was some variation.
Without glass, it was 45.
Yeah, and I think with the
And
glasses,
with
I think it came down to around 35.
yes, ma'am.
So, what would be your plan for this child?
Though the patient was esotropia was improving with glasses,
Can you
but
maintain them with glasses?
to correct the residual esotropia, we have to plan surgery.
Yeah.
Like we can do
What
by
else if you're not going to correct the esotropia? Why is that you need to correct it? Is it just cosmesis or is there something else that you're wanting to improvise?
that can cause amblyopia and the on.
Okay.
So
Is it amblyopia alone?
to give the binocular
Binoc-
vision. To maintain binocularity, we have to do surgery.
Fusion. To get fusion and to avoid restrictive changes in the MR muscle over a long period of time.
Okay. We basically want to improve both motor as well as the sensory aspect of the squint. Okay. So if you want to improve the diopters, then actually there is a age cutoff. Okay. Below which if you intervene, then your outcome is going to be better.
Okay.
There is something called as early intervention in infantile esotropia. So there is one group which feels that if this child is going to be intervened at as early as possible, that is once you see a squint and then within 4 months of observing a squint, if you're going to interfere, only then your binocularity might be re-established. Otherwise, whatever surgery you do will not bring back the 100% stereopsis. It might be a compromised stereopsis only. Even though motor alignment might be good, your sensory or your stereopsis may not be that 100% as comparable to a normal. Okay.
Okay.
So that is one group which thinks that way. But then intervention in a child which is so small is something which needs a lot of other considerations that need to be taken before you plan a surgical intervention. So in this child is 3 years, right? So what
Yes,
was
ma'am. We can plan medial rectus recession.
okay? What if in case this child has had an associated inferior oblique overaction or an associated
Then it
because
can,
that is one of the most common associations in an infantility. Did you look for that?
yes, ma'am. So
Was there
if
an
inferior oblique overaction is associated, then inferior oblique weakening procedure we can plan, like inferior oblique recession or retro equatorial myopexy we can done.
what retroequatorial myopexy?
For inferior oblique overaction.
Okay. What is retroequatorial myopexy? Yeah, that and all doesn't come here. Okay.
Okay.
So if you want to correct the esotropia along with the inferior oblique overaction, then you can plan. Depending upon the grade of the inferior oblique overaction, you need to plan your surgical correction. Okay, so
Okay.
that is totally different. You need to plan accordingly. So what if this patient had a purely accommodative component, that is just refractive component? If this patient, say for example, had a +7 hyperopia or something, which was increasing on near gaze. So how would you manage this?
We would
By
have
prescribing
given a
bifocal
full
glasses,
By
See,
bifocal glasses.
for distance and near, there's going to be a disparity. Okay, if there is going to be an increase in the near angle of more than 10 from that of the distance,
Then
then how do you
bifocal
manage this child?
executive type of bifocal glasses plus
Executive
amblyopia
glass.
therapy.
Okay. Will you maintain the child on executive bifocals? Are you just going to keep me? So with the executive bifocals, you again remeasure and see for distance and near how much it is going to correct. What is AC by A ratio?
AC by ratio is that after for every one diopter of accommodation, there is accommodative convergence of 3 to 4 prism diopter.
Okay.
So generally it is 3 to 5 prism diopter.
So what happens in patients who have a higher this thing AC by A ratio?
It can be increase in the accommodative convergence or decrease in the accommodation. Both can happen. So ratio will increase.
This the convergence exists. For every diopter of accommodation, the amount of convergence, that is more.
Yes, ma'am, that is convergence, accommodative convergence that increases.
How will you
But
wean off a child? Will you keep maintaining the child on bifocals lifelong, or is there something else that you would like to do over a period of time?
Exercises can help, orthoptic exercises.
How? Anybody else can tell.
Or we can give cycloplegics for few times.
No, rule of cycloplegic does not come here. The role of cycloplegic is to make them accept the bifocal. Once they accept the bifocal, then you need to push in the bifocal and make them wear the bifocal so that they are aligned. So your fusional range is around 8 prisms. So if you're going to get a deviation lesser than that, then you can maintain them on bifocals. Okay. Otherwise, if the angle is not going to get corrected, then you need to correct the angle of deviation as well surgically. Okay, and you cannot keep on maintaining a child on bifocals lifetime. Okay, at some point you have to take a call. You start cutting down on the bifocals and see if the alignment remains maintained. See, once a child reaches teens or something, then you start cutting down them in increments of 0.75 or 1 and see if the angle remains maintained. And with a good stereopsis, whatever stereopsis they have developed, then that should also not get compromised when you are cutting down on the bifocals. Okay, for near you need to check the stereopsis, then reduce your this thing and then keep following them up. Then you have to slowly wean them off the bifocals. You just can't keep maintaining them on bifocals. And the last option is cosmetically, if they are not too happy with the bifocals, then at some point you might have to take a call. If they have a distant deviation or something, then you can correct the distant deviation along with a Cardans or something to take care of the increase in the deviation for near. So those would be your treatment plan with regard to children who have a high AC by ADQ.
Okay.
Children with purely refractive accommodated type of esotropia, they usually will have a good stereopsis as well. So for them, if you maintain them on glasses over a period of time, as they hemetropize, they might have a little bit of a reduction in their plus number. But then they will continue to wear glasses as well. Glasses will be the only line of management for purely refractive accommodated type of esotropias. Okay, in partial accommodative esotropia, the amount of esotropia what is taken care of with the glasses. There is a refractive component is there. You maintain them on the glasses, and the remaining esotropia, if it's not within the this thing fusional angle, then that needs to be surgically corrected to improve your stereopsis.
Okay.
Okay, and then in infantile esotropia line of management would be depending upon the age of onset and the underlying this thing features like. Yeah, how will you manage a child purely infantile esotropia if it comes to you around 6 months or something? And if you feel the fixation is not alternating, it is mostly right esotropia, then how would you check for fixation preference? Is there any test that you know? Now, if you're wanting to intervene, you got my question. If you're wanting to intervene on a child where your visual assessment is not going to be possible, okay, is there any other test that can be done to pick up your fixation preference? Pritesh, you're there?
Yes,
With
ma'am.
occlusion, ma'am,
Yeah.
we'll do alternate occlusion, and that eye that doesn't take the fixation, they will like won't allow to occlude that eye.
Now, there's something called as a 10 prism base up or down test. Okay, to look for the fixation preference, because you don't want to operate on a child which has an underlying amblyopia. That is, the fixation preference is for one eye, means the other eye is probably a little suppressed eye. Okay, so that can be picked up with the 10 prism base up or down test. You basically place a 10 prism and base up or down. Okay, so if you're changing the prism between the two eyes, the child should alternatively start fixing with the other eye which does not have the prism. But if that does not happen, and if this child still prefers to fix with only one eye, and it ignores the other eye which is the amblyopic eye, then that will give you a clue. Okay, so the child is still having a suppression, so you need to start patching, and then once the squint starts alternating freely between the two eyes, then you plan surgery. Okay, because these children are not going to cooperate for your cover test or prism bar cover test and other things are not going to be possible in small babies. So you need to have clues to pick them up. whether there is any underlying suppression or vision is equal between the two eyes. All those things you have to have something in mind before you plan your further management. Okay, so there are a few things I want all of you to read with regard to strabismus. Okay, so if you have a child with an infantile esotropia or something, then you probably have to learn a little bit about the theories underlying infantile esotropia. Okay, you have something called a sensory theory and motor theories, and so many things are there. So you please read up theory. I don't know, even AO gives you a little bit basic idea about the theories. Okay, outline at least you should know. Okay, and invariably, if some of the examiners are keen, they might ask you on microtropia. What is microtropia? Okay, yes. Sitesh, can you tell me what is
Microtropia is ultra small angle of deviation,
Yeah.
maybe post surgery or can be present pre surgery.
Is it? What is it? Small angle.
There can be a residual angle that can also be a small residual angle after surgery.
Microtropia is a small residual esotropia following surgery. Even otherwise, even a normal person or anybody can have a small angle deviation.
Yes, ma'am.
So what will that cause?
Ma'am, these
Yes,
patients
ma'am.
have peripheral binocular fixation.
Yeah. So centrally they'll have a suppression
Central
scotoma.
suppression scotoma.
Scotoma will be there. What test will?
4 prism diopter base out test we will do.
Yeah, you need to do a 4 prism base out test to pick up a
Scotoma. Yes.
Okay, the central scotoma you can identify with the 4 prism base out test. Then something about all theories underlying all these, your extraocular motility, I want all of you to know Herring's law of equal innervation or Sherrington's law of reciprocal innervation. Then what is primary deviation, what is secondary deviation? Because to differentiate between a committant and incommittant squint, if there is a paralytic squint or something, then you should know what basically is primary deviation and what is secondary deviation. Can you tell me what is primary
deviation? Is the deviation of the pathological eye. And secondary deviation is the deviation after covering the pathological eye. The deviation in the normal eye is secondary deviation. That will be more in case of paralytic squint.
When you ask the patient to fixate with the normal eye and you're measuring the angle, say for example, the patient has got a left 6-nerve palsy and you're measuring the patient by asking him to fixate with the right eye. So you basically are placing the prism in the left eye. That is your paralytic eye, and then you're measuring. So that is your primary deviation. Whereas when you're asking him to fixate with the paralytic eye. Now say for example, a left 6-nerve palsy, the patient is going to put in an effort to bring the eye from the inward to the central position. So that amount of innervation is going to go to the left medial rectus. So the amount of innervation what goes to the right medial rectus is going to be way large. Okay, so that esotropia is going to be really high. Okay, so that is what is your secondary deviation. So in a paralytic squint, your secondary deviation is going to be more when compared to your primary deviation. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you should know all these things. What is a primary deviation? What is secondary deviation? And angle kappa. I don't know if you have read about angle kappa, pseudo esotropia and other things and all. They might question you on all these things. What is positive angle kappa? What is angle kappa?
Angle kappa is an angle between visual axis and optical axis. That is usually 5 degree.
It's not 5.
Because
it's 1.4 to 2.8. If I remember right, I think it is only that much degrees. Okay. Okay, and you should know the basics of cover and uncover test. What do you look for in a cover test and what are you looking for in an uncover test? And whenever you're doing an alternate cover test and a cover uncover test, what else would you look for? Because even nystagmus and other things might be picked up on your cover uncover test. Particularly when you're seeing the patient may not have, if there is a latent nystagmus or something, it can be picked up on your cover test. So carefully look for all these things when you're doing a clinical examination. Okay, then coming to extraocular movements, again, I want all of you to know about the primary, secondary, and the tertiary ocular action of all the extraocular muscles. Inversion and duction. Inversions, what are the synergies? What is a yoke muscle? The basics of extraocular muscle, anatomy, physiology, and other things you have to know before you start examining. Only then you can apply whatever you're seeing. Otherwise, it's very difficult to build your knowledge on strabismus.
Okay.
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 Everybody has gone through the handout, whatever he gave.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, huh? Sure, I can take your word for it, is it? What are the various types of bifocals? Bifocals, if you were to prescribe for a child with a high AC by A ratio, is there any particular type of bifocal that you would insist on?
Executive type of bifocal.
Executive bifocal. Because if examples are going to come, they will definitely ask you all these things: bifocals, bisecting the pupillary axis, and other things. You should know. Okay, before they ask, if you tell them, then they will not ask you any further. Okay, and a cycloplegic refraction is a must in this case. Okay, any type of esotropia, for that matter, any child, cycloplegic refraction is a must. More so in a child where you have an esotropia, because there might be an underlying component of hyperopia. So the entire total hyperopia will be manifest only if you use a cycloplegic. So either atropine or a cyclopentolate has to be used to get the full cycloplegic value, and then you try glasses. So glasses, basically, it's not that all glasses. There are various authors who have various this thing, like anything more than 1.5, even in a child who's 7 to 8 months, you can still give a trial of hyperopic correction and see if that hyperopic correction is going to reduce your isotropic angle. Okay, so there are some who give glasses only if it is more than 2.5, but there are some who even give even for 1.5, even in a smaller child. Because if the child is orthophoric and you have a cycloplegic refraction of 2.5 and 3, you really don't correct it, unless otherwise there is an underlying esotropia. Okay, so you should have your concepts clear before you start treating or managing. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, fine. If there are no questions,
Ma'am Pallavi here. I
yeah,
wanted to know how to differentiate between the conversion excess and divergence insufficiency esotropia.
that you need to do orthopic evaluation.
Okay.
For distance here, disparity will anyway be there. If there is a divergence paralysis, the esotropia is going to be moved for distance. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that measurement will anyway give you a clue, but for you to be very this thing, then you have to get a orthopic evaluation done. But this, if you measure criticity for distance and near itself, you will know that angle for distance will be more, definitely more than that for near. Any other treatment options that you have for correction of esotropia other than your surgical correction or your glasses? Have you
Botox.
got anything else?
Botox.
Yeah, what is the role of Botox in esotropia?
In esotropia, since medial rectus is since the medial rectus muscle is overacting, we inject Botox in medial rectus muscle so that
Yeah, there have been comparative studies which have compared the role of Botox versus surgical correction. That is, instead of bimetal resection, you can even use or inject Botox into the medial rectus to correct the deviation. But that works more in deviations of 30 to 35. And whereas in very large angle ESO deviation, usually surgical intervention would be a better option.
If the child doesn't wear with
So, good evening, sir.
the child doesn't wear with the high hyperopia, refuses to wear the glasses, what do you do?
Sitesh, are you there? Sitesh?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, TSS sir is asking you.
We can advise contact lenses.
One option. See, when the child is refusing to wear the glasses, contact lens also will be difficult. She will not cope. Child will not cope. Then what can you think of? It's for temporarily for a couple of months. Phospholine iodide. Okay, phospholine iodide is available as 0.067 and 0.1.
Okay.
Labels are available. I think you can start with 0.067 and then every night once both eyes. It will become myotic, but I think they become pretty straight. Till the child accepts the glasses, you can put the child on bottom. You can put the child on phospholine iodide. Okay, it's still available
Okay, sir.
in Canada and USA.
Okay.
I think the alternative is to have a 4% pilocarpine if it is available. Make it 2 or 3 times. That also works.
Okay, sir.
Another option. And inferior rubric, I think majority of the cases will okay, the child is 6 months or 1 year, you may not be able to get the cooperation for finding out the movements. That's so. Best thing is see with an indirect ophthalmoscope how much is the extortion or intorsion. Is the extortion, it's a inferior rubric is overacting. So you can, depending on that, you can try the 5 procedures of inferior oblique, and if DVD is there, I think you can try the anti-radiation of inferior oblique.
Okay, sir.
60% of the infantile esotropia have post-TV phenomenon. What is differential recession? Differential recession of the medial
Differential recession.
differential recession of the
Don't know, sir.
40 gaze is 30 and 20 in the down gaze, and you don't find that much of inferior oblique overaction. And you can always inspect the inferior oblique also how thick it is. Suppose you are not convinced that inferior oblique is overacting, so due to anatomical placement of the muscles, there can be a V phenomena. So in those cases, when you are resisting the medial rectus, you can go is 40% bimedial. So 40, 20%. So each millimeter corrects about 5%. So you will have to resist 5 millimeter. Down, you will have to resist 20, 40, 30, 20. No, 20 means millimeter. So you
Okay.
have to 5. So you put it in a little obliquely to correct the V pattern. Okay.
Okay, sir.
It's called as differential recession.
Okay.
If there is no inferior oblique overaction. Many times, I think the lateral rectus and medial rectus, sometimes they take a oblique direction. So when you open and see, they will have oblique direction. And that may be causing the V phenomena, but the inferior oblique will be the normal size. So if the normal size, again you will have to do this differential recession and put it little obliquely to collapse the V. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Microtropia is monofixation syndrome.
Monofixation.
Monofixation syndrome. Typical microtropia. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay.
How much Botox will you give? I think 40. How much buttocks will do? What is the calculation?
No idea what that.
2.5 to 5 units. Sir.
Suppose it is 40. Only to one medial rectus. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Automatically it gets correct. Actually, Marshall Parks has not Marshall Parks. Alan Scott has a different calculation, but I was trying initially for quite number of cases. So I thought it worked out as whatever is the deviation. Suppose it's 45, 4.5 units.
Okay, sir.
50
Okay.
becomes 5 units.
5 units.
Right. Mike
Okay.
Das can take over.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for joining.
Sure, sure.
If there are no further questions, then I think we'll end the class.
Okay.
Thank you all of you for joining.